Welcome to History for 6th grade. This is lesson 150. After this video, you're going to read pages 296 to 300, answer the comprehension check on page 300. There's just 3 questions there, and do that on paper. And then for homework for this lesson is to do chapter checkup 16, D, numbers 9 through 11, E, numbers 6 through 11, F, numbers 1 and 2, and G, numbers 1 through 7. All right, and I know that that's quite a bit, and if you don't get it all done for this, since it is we have the online classes, if that is you're not able to finish all of those, save some of them for tomorrow's homework. You won't have you'll be studying for a quiz, so you do want to get those answered before the quiz, because you'll need to study some of that for that quiz that is on Wednesday. But you can do half of them tonight and then half of them tomorrow, or you could break that up how you need to. But and then we also have a map skill sheet, and it's skill sheet 41, and it looks like this, okay? And this one is for 2 days. So today I want you to do, and this might be another reason why all those questions might be hard to answer with today. So if you pull out your map skill sheet book, turn to page 78 and 79, that's skill sheet 41. And what you're going to do is you are going to read the map index, section A on page 79. And then at the top of the middle column, it gives you 2 questions or things to answer. So it's find the following capital cities and tell what country they're located on. So you're going to find those on the map and find and write the country next to it. And then it gives you 4 countries, and you're going to write the capital of those. So just neatly write them next to that. And then the nautical miles, B, I'm going to have you do that one. And so for this, you're going to find how many nautical miles lie between the following locations. So Havana and San Juan. So the nautical miles, you're going to use a nautical mile is a little bit longer. It's 1.5 or 1.15 than our regular statute mile. Okay, so just make sure. So, and this scale that it gives you, a half an inch is equal to 100 statute miles. So it would be 1.15. Let me check that. Okay, I'm sorry. I just realized that they've actually given some of those. They've given those to you. You just need to find them on the map and write down those numbers, okay? So those are the 2 sections that I want you to do today, and then tomorrow you're going to do the scale of statute miles and the latitude and longitude. So we'll save that for tomorrow. So we're going to be looking at a lot of islands. I know we've been looking at a lot of islands, but these are a lot of the littler, smaller islands, okay? So the Virgin Islands are divided into 2 different sets. There's the British Virgin Islands and what were the Danish West Indies, and now they're the U.S. Virgin Islands, okay? So we're going to take a look. And the Virgin Islands is a group of islands there in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Caribbean Sea, and there are 3 islands that were named by Columbus. Well, actually, he named one of them Santa Cruz. St. Croix, he named Santa Cruz, but he, I'm sorry, Spain did not settle that, and so it was the British took control of that at the northern islands, and then the Denmark founded settlements on St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. But then years later, Denmark sold their islands to the US for $25 million. A lot of money, but there's a lot of islands there. And so these 3 main islands, and then there are several smaller islands that we own. There were missionaries that went to these islands. So Moravian missionaries, there was a Danish, when they were the Danish West Indies, a man from the Danish West Indies went to Copenhagen, Denmark, where he met Count von Zinzendorf. And Count von Zinzendorf was the great leader of the Moravian church. And he told Count von Zinzendorf that missionaries would be welcome on the islands. And so he sent 2 of his missionaries in 1732. They were some of the very first foreign missionaries of modern times, and others later joined them, and they established many missionary stations on these islands. And so today, the British control the northeastern Virgin Islands, and so they have Tortola, Anegada, and some of the smaller islands. And then the U.S. owns, if you look at the little map on 296, all the green islands are what British owns, and all the yellow or orangish islands are what the U.S. owns. St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. There's also the Virgin Islands National Park that would feature much of the tropical waters and diving and lots of very the tropical growth and all the different fruits and stuff that they would grow there. And it is it's a very big tourist spot. And so that is part of the United States National Park System. And so be right up there with Yosemite and Yellowstone. It's one of the national parks. And because we own it, they're not states, that's a territory, but because we own it, it is part of our, it's a place that you could go as a U.S. citizen. And so then there is Buck Island that's near St. Croix, and it's a favorite place for scuba diving. And so they don't have a lot of natural resources there on those islands because they're very small. They don't have a lot of streams like you would think that some islands would have, but the smaller islands are too small for those fresh water streams, and so they have to buy bottled water, and they have to import things, and then they export things to sell. The group of islands that's called the Leeward Islands is a portion of the Lesser Antilles. And so if you're in your book on 298, there's a map at the top, and you can see the Lesser Antilles. So these are the smaller islands. So that shows the Greater Antilles. It starts with Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. And it goes over to Cuba and Haiti. But the Virgin Islands are part of the Lesser Antilles. And then if you go down, Anguilla and Antigua and Barbuda and Guadalupe and Dominica, those are all known as the Leeward Islands, and there's several smaller islands in between that would be included with that. They lie east and southeast of Puerto Rico. Then you've got the Windward Islands that start with the pink ones: Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and Barbados and Grenada. Barbados is yellow and Grenada is purple. And then Trinidad and Tobago are not considered part of the Windward. They're south of that. So the Windward Islands are just those that are above the name Windward Island, and so the smaller islands there. Okay, so in the Leeward Islands, Antigua became the strongest center of Christianity among the blacks of the West Indies during the late 1700s. And that's due to several men. And so there was Nathaniel Gilbert, who was a lawyer and a planter. And he went to Antigua, and he came to Christ under the ministry of John Wesley. There was also John Baxter, who went, and he was a shipbuilder, and he preached in his spare time. And then there's Thomas Koch, and he was a good friend of John Wesley, and he visited the island. And he was so excited to see people who were following Christ that he went and he came back to the islands 5 times, and each time he brought more missionaries with him. And so it really was the gospel just spread through this island. And so this great-hearted man, Thomas Koch, whom John Wesley called his right hand, is remembered as the founder of the Methodist missions. And he died doing what he loved and following Christ. He died on his way to missionary work in India in 1814. And so, for a Christian to die trying to take the gospel somewhere is that I don't think that there's a better way for that to end. But then there's Guadalupe, and it is part of. They're not part of France, but they're very closely tied to France, and so they have much of their government and the way they operate is very closely related to France, and they actually have a representative in the French National Assembly in France. So they are independent, but they would be probably French citizens. So that's the way that works. It's kind of like the Virgin Islands, and they're kind of independent and kind of a part of us. Dominica was actually discovered by Christopher Columbus, and Dominica means the Lord's Day or Sunday, and he discovered it on a Sunday, so that's why he named it that. And so there was many that were fighting for control: the French, the British, and the Caribbeans. But Britain won out, and so it is a European colony, and they have they brought in slaves from Africa to work their banana and coconut farms, and then they gained their freedom in 1978, and but they had a hurricane in 1979, and so that was a devastating thing for them. And English is their official language. One of the things that I was going to mention about, about the West Indies, or about the Virgin Islands, is that the U.S. Virgin Islands is the only U.S. possession where the people drive on the left side of the road. Okay, so that's something that is interesting about them. So if you ever go visit the Virgin Islands, make sure you might want to let them drive for you. Sometimes it's a little scary to drive in another country like that, especially if they drive on the other side of the road. All right. So then the Windward Islands, Grenada and Barbados would be those bigger islands there. Grenada is sometimes called the Isle of Spice. They're a major exporter and role in nutmeg and other spices. And so that's something that they are very much good at, is the spices. They did have a time where Cuba tried to overtake them for communism, and they figured out, they called out, the other islands were like, we're seeing this, and they called out to the US for help, and so we were able to liberate Grenada, and also there were other islands that helped in that. Antigua, Barbados, Barbuda, Dominica, and Jamaica, they all helped to free them from that communist rule, and so they weren't overtaken. Barbados lies the farthest east of all the West Indian islands. It's also one of the most densely populated. It's the world's most densely populated country. It's one of the world's most densely populated countries. And so they also drive on the right side or the left side of the street, but they're an English, a British colony, or not colony, but they're much, they follow the English way of life, the British, and so that's why they would drive on the left side. And they actually have a very high literacy rate. 97% of the adults can read and write. So that is very, very unusual for that type of culture, but that's great that they do. The Netherlands Antilles, there's Aruba, Curaçao, and Bonaire. They're all near Venezuela. They're the largest islands that are the Dutch West Indies and the Netherlands Antilles, and they have several smaller islands. Their biggest thing is oil refinery, and they refine the oil that's shipped from Venezuela and then send it off. And of course, their as they have name is the Netherlands Antilles. They have a partnership with the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Trinidad and Tobago would be the last two, and so they went through some of the same turmoil of, okay, so this country is going to settle me, no, it's this country. And so Columbus discovered Trinidad in 1498, claimed the island for Spain. They began to settle it in 1592. The Dutch came to Tobago, who was close by shortly after, and during the late 1700s, Spain offered land on Trinidad to Roman Catholic settlers from other countries. So many people came in those times, and that just added to the mix of nationalities there. Britain gained control of the island of Trinidad in 1797 and captured Tobago by 1802. And so for many years, they again had African slaves brought over until it was abolished in 1834. And Indian workers replaced the African slaves, and that's another culture that was brought in. And so they are, Trinidad and Tobago are a united British colony, and now they have, by 1888 and by 1962, they won their independence. And in 76, they became a republic and a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. And they also depend heavily on oil, refining, and production. And an interesting fact is that Tobago, which is the smaller of the two islands, Some say that it was the island Daniel Defoe had in mind when he wrote Robinson Crusoe. So if you've heard that story, read some of it, that's a possibility. I don't know, but that's some people say that. So go ahead and make sure you do the homework. Make sure you read this and answer the comprehension check on paper. And you have a quiz on Wednesday. Those pages are 293 to 300 to study. So what you're just finishing reading, so you can start studying for that. And then there is a test on Friday over chapters 15 and 16. So we're going to be finishing up chapter 16 in the next 2 days, and then we'll have a review on Thursday, test on Friday. And so don't forget the map skill sheet 41A and B, and we will see you in the next lesson.